Hello, everyone, and welcome to Meet the Vets, brought to you by the Veterans Network. Here we sit down and have a conversation with vets from across the company and learn how their military experiences helped them succeed here at NBCUniversal. I'm your host, Alexis Rodriguez, and in today's episode, we'll be speaking with fellow Army veteran and VP for Streaming IP and Innovation, Eric Fisher. How you doing, Eric? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Alexis. Glad to be here.
Awesome. How's your day going?
It's been pretty good. You know, upfronts for today, so it's always a little bit busy.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Enjoy anything from the upfronts that you saw?
I think that there's some promising things, from my perspective, I think, from a IP and innovation side.
Right.
I'm excited about some of the things that we're doing in the video game space and other places. So
Great.
A lot of blue sky out there that hopefully we can do some down here at Telemundo as well.
Awesome. And how long have you been with the company now?
I've been with, I'm a Comcaster originally. So I've been with Comcast for about 4, and I've been here for about 3.
Nice.
So, yeah, including Comcast being here 4.
Wow. So you were in Philly before, in Comcast Center, or?
Sort of. So when I graduated from my MBA program, I was actually in a rotational leadership program.
Okay.
Where about every 6 months or so, I would go to a different part of the company.
Oh, wow.
So I was in Philly for a little bit. I was in Denver with a digital startup that we had. Came down here working for Ingrid Graham and Amanda Calpin, our CFO and head of ops down here. And also worked with the 5G group up in Philadelphia as well. So I've been bouncing around the company a lot.
Nice.
And I really enjoyed my time here. It's how I ended up here at Telemundo. So.
That's great to hear. So streaming IP and innovation, tell us a little bit about that. What does your job consist of?
The way I like to think of it is, instead of it being jargony, is that my job is to help the chairman and the CFO with long-term strategic thinking in terms of new platforms, new technologies, and new IPs and formats that will succeed on those areas.
Nice.
So really it's kind of finding a way of taking the traditional Telemundo package that's done so well on linear and bringing it to digital in ways
like
beyond
all the content that we create,
but beyond a 10-episode premium series that we have.
Okay. Yeah, trying to do more than just streaming the actual show or the content that we're making. So you're like marketing it out.
Absolutely.
Different
and just
projects out of it.
Anything trying to find a way to maximize that digital revenue as the market kind of changes into a new environment.
And how does that affect you, like job-wise, since now, the market has evolved so much into more of the digital space than just traditional TV. You're watching cable TV.
Yeah. Well, I think in some ways it has merged into a new thing in that, digital obviously is not linear. But at the same time, if you look at streaming, fast, specifically AVOD,
right.
It's television, right? It's TV with commercial breaks that you're selling ad space for, and you're making interesting channels that appeal to people. So that really hasn't changed too much.
Okay.
I think that the real, disruptor is what we're doing here, podcasting on YouTube in that digital space, because it deals with different demographics more so than different technologies. And that's, I think, something that's really exciting. Look, it's at the end of the day, any type of change is scary, right? And you and I know from our previous job in the Army, right, that, you're dealing with uncertainty, you're dealing with a lot of stress, you're dealing with a lot of pressure. Thankfully, the stakes aren't as high. But that, in my opinion, is the most beneficial. That pushes you to new areas that you didn't think existed before.
You have to adapt and overcome.
Exactly. And not only do you have to adapt and overcome, I think that constant change keeps you invigorated and keeps you alive.
Right.
So I would rather be part of a network like here that's trying to innovate into that new area, whether we're successful or not. Look, chances are, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. We're probably not going to succeed with everything that we do.
Right.
But the fact that we're taking those extra at-bats means that we're going to be learning and doing things that can be stacked and kind of put in that toolbox for myself and also for the company to do well in the future.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Eric. Where are you from? Where did you grow up?
I'm from all over the place. So I was born in Boston.
Okay.
But when I was 1 year old, I actually moved overseas. So I didn't move back to the United States until college, actually. So I lived 17 years abroad in 7 different countries: Singapore, Taiwan, Philippines, Dubai, Tunisia, India, and Australia.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a mouthful. But I think that those experiences really shaped me in a lot of different and unique ways, right? My dad at the start of that was in the defense industry, actually.
Okay.
Southeast Asia, East Asia was his, zone.
So he's the one that was getting moved around because of the career.
Yeah, most international postings are about 2 years, and then they move you somewhere. But, I think, the benefit for me was I got to live in places that most people spend their whole life, but they spend their whole life trying to save up to go visit there for a week, right?
Right.
And whether that's, being in India, whether that's being in Singapore, whether that's on our weekend vacations in the 80s and 90s, we went to Bali before Bali was a thing.
Right.
You learn a lot of these different cultures and different things.
That's
amazing. Which, by the way, is part of the reason why Telemundo kind of appealed to me too. I like the fact that it's got a bit of a international, a bit of a that diversity group.
Absolutely.
That I think it lends itself well to the way I grew up, the way I think, and the way I do things.
We have a huge diversity here, culture, at Telemundo and NBC. I mean, well, specifically with Telemundo here, we hit all of Latin America. So, we're everywhere: Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, Argentina.
Absolutely.
So we have all these different cultures within the Latin culture, which makes it, very diverse.
Yeah, and for me also, though, with my dad being in the defense industry, I got to go to the Singapore Air Show, corporate side, as a 4-year-old kid. And I'll tell you what, when you're a 4-year-old kid, nothing's cooler than your dad showing you like F-15s in the back of the back room. But
absolutely, it's impressive. Even as an adult now, I got to go and interview the Thunderbirds with the Air Force, and they took me right on the flight line next to F-16s. And even as an adult, I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Oh yeah,
so
it's
you can't even imagine as a kid seeing that.
Yeah, so I loved doing that. Eventually, he went into the oil and gas industry.
Okay.
And I went off to college in the States and kind of started my own trail. So
nice, very nice, awesome. So let's talk a little shop, Eric. So what made you decide to join the military, and why the Army?
So it's a couple of things. I'd say first and foremost, because I grew up internationally, I got to see the United States kind of as a foreigner.
Okay.
And in some of the countries I lived, like the Philippines, where there's first world pockets of extravagance and really nice things, but then you leave the compound, there's abject poverty in some of these areas, right? And you really come to understand and appreciate what's in America. And I would get, my summer and Christmas breaks, I'd get a snippet for a few weeks and then I'd go back.
Right.
So that's always something, obviously, that I always had a deep love for this country. And growing up in those foreign countries, at the core, I was always still an American. I went to American schools. Right. My family taught me a lot of the values and things that they loved about the country. So that was one part of it. My dad was an ex-Navy officer. My grandfather was an ex-Navy officer.
So you have a military legacy in your family?
No, only Army is on my mother's side. My grandfather and my great-grandfather were Army. Everyone else is Navy.
Wow.
And then, as a result, when I went to undergrad, I actually had a NROTC scholarship to be in the Navy.
Okay.
And, the thing that my first twinge of what I liked about the infantry was when you're a scholarship person in the Navy, you have to do something called Quartermid. I totally forget what the acronym stands for. But you do a week in every branch of the Navy. So you do a week on a destroyer, a week on a submarine, week with a flight wing, and then a week with the Marine Corps.
Okay.
And there was just something about, the grunt stuff that appealed to me, which I guess I kind of regretted every time I'd look up and see planes fly when I was rucking. But, there's just something about that appealed to me.
Absolutely.
And I ended up transferring from Purdue to to a private school in the Boston area called Bentley. And they didn't have Navy ROTC. So I had to give up that scholarship.
Wow.
When I made that move. But I always kind of had that desire to serve and do things.
Okay.
I think another big thing is overseas, September 11th. For me, that happened at night, right? That was 9 p.m. I was doing my homework. I'd have the news on every night.
Okay.
So I watched the whole thing, soup to nuts, as it happened.
Where were you at?
So we were in the Ascot Hotel in Singapore. At the time. We'd just moved back there. And so I still remember that very vividly. And that's something that really made me want to serve on top of all the other things. Mm-hmm. So, I thought, I'm at Bentley, I don't want to do this I'm out of the Navy, I'm free, let's go do whatever. And, I still had that pull.
Right.
So I actually had a flight contract with the Navy.
Okay.
I had a flight contract with the Marine Corps. And then I had an OCS contract open-ended with the Army. Because I was just like, look, you guys are all taking a little too long. Whichever one of you kind of can get your act together first, I'm going to do.
Okay.
And, it came down to having to make a choice between those three.
Right.
And I had a guarantee, be a fighter pilot for the Navy or the Marines. But that infantry bug just kind of got me. And it wasn't a guarantee. I had to compete for it at OCS. I think generally it's like top 5% of the people get infantry. I was 17th overall in my class.
Nice.
So I got one of the last slots. And then I kind of went on from there. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you had kind of the patriotism of being away from U.S. and then the 9/11 strike that kind of just pushed you overboard to join.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's incredible. So what was your day-to-day like? What was your training like in the military, in the Army? What did you do on a daily basis?
So, schoolhouse aside, right? As an officer, you have to do 1 or 2 years of that. The only thing I will touch on in schoolhouse is I was always very proud of the fact that I was an officer candidate school guy.
Okay.
Because I had to go to basic training as Specialist Eric, right? And as I'm sure you're aware, Specialist Eric didn't get paid too well. Specialist Eric was, and I think, you have less of a God complex than some of these places where you're told you're the greatest gift to the Army, right? And it really gave me a deep appreciation of my enlisted soldiers and specifically my NCOs.
Okay.
So
you did regular basic before going to OCS?
Yeah. So, to learn how to march and salute and all those things.
Yeah.
But after schoolhouse, I went to Colorado Springs, and I was in an infantry unit. I just missed their deployment. They sent a SFAT team about a month after I got there, so I ended up being in Rear D. Except since it was SFAT, we still did full battalion operations, just without all of our key leadership somehow. So we still did that was a mechanized unit, so we still did a full gunnery, we still did platoon ops, we still did live fires, all that stuff.
Nice.
And the day-to-day as an officer is, you wake up, you do your morning meeting, you coordinate your stuff, you do your PT, and then you conduct training, right? And, I took great pride in the fact that I would always create training that made my lower enlisted shine.
Awesome.
That I think a lot of times people make again, they think they're God's gift to the Army. They make the best plan in the world, and they do things, exactly the way I wrote it up. That's how we're going to do it.
Okay.
And, me and my platoon sergeant, who, had been in since Bosnia, I think. He'd been in a long time.
Yeah.
But he and I would intentionally make scenarios that made people react and think, such that if we had someone practicing clearing a room, first squad would have 2 people in there, second squad might have no people in there, third squad would have all civilians in there, et cetera. And,
make different scenarios.
So you had to think.
So it's not always cookie cutter.
Yeah. And I felt that brought the best out of my guys.
Absolutely.
And then, the other part of naturally being an officer is your mother to 42 guys with all their issues and all their problems. And that's always a good time. It's frustrating at times, but it's a good time. And I've had the full gamut from, spouses who have been bringing their squabbles to me, to, I think at the worst part, about a month before I got out, a soldier forged his paperwork for a medical procedure and electively got a leg amputated. Very, very long story.
Oh my gosh.
But I actually had to talk to the Surgeon General. I didn't do anything wrong. He falsified TRICARE stuff. But yeah, it was the good news though, is after you go through stuff like that, there's literally nothing in Telemundo, NBC, or any other company I've been in before or I will be in that can relate to the stress and panic
that you're under in the military.
That you're under in those situations.
Absolutely.
And that's, I think, part of the reason why I've been able to be so successful, at least to this point, knock on wood, in my career. It's that you're able to keep a cool head, because when you're dealing with, especially a mechanized unit, your 4 tracks are spread out over 2 clicks. One half your platoon's dismounted. You're still on the tracks on the other side. I have 3 radios. I'm talking to battalion fires and my guys. Here it's like, hey, can you get this email done by next Friday? It's like, yeah, sure, I can do that.
Corporate world, so, completely different. Yeah.
So it's obviously there's a little more complexity to that here, but net, I think that's what's helped me a lot.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. How was OCS school? I never got to. I mean, I remember seeing the platoons running around with their little ascots in your shirts and stuff like that.
So back when I did it, it was a little more cush than it is today.
Yeah.
Because we were there. I was there in 2010. So height of the surge, all that stuff. And for us, it was a gentleman's class, right?
Okay.
Because at the time, we were all going to deploy. It was like Oprah. You're getting a deployment. You're getting a deployment, right?
Right.
And I think by week 2. We were allowed to go off post.
Wow.
And go drink downtown in Columbus. By week 4, we were all going to Auburn to party on the weekends, or I was dating a girl in Atlanta.
officers, man.
It was pretty nice. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say it's fair. It was nice.
Listed where they're like scrubbing our boots.
Well, now my good friend from graduate school, his younger brother actually just went through OCS about 2 years ago.
Awesome.
It's not as chill as it was when I was there.
No?
So
Yeah.
and the party ended around the time I was there because I think someone had a little too much to drink on post and mouthed off
Ruined
to a
it
flag
for
officer.
everybody.
So
Yeah.
like that was kind of the end of that. But when I was there, it was a good time. So it was very, very chill. But the thing I liked about it more than anything is even though we had a lot of freedoms kind of on the outside, literally everything we did was ranked and graded, and they had maybe 3 different OMLs put up over the course of the day. So, whether you were getting major or minor minuses for little things, like I said, if you want to be the infantry, you're going to be top 5%. Like those things really mattered, at least for me. In my opinion, the course itself is like any Army course. It's designed to make as many people pass as possible because otherwise we don't have an Army, right? So,
right.
I don't think it's overly difficult or not difficult. I don't think it compares to, your Ranger schools or anything like that in the world.
Right.
But I enjoyed that. And I really, again, I resonated that some of my best friends I still talk to this day were the ones that were, prior E6s, prior E7s. That
converted?
That jumped over for better paycheck and get their stuff. But those people really taught me, I think, how to be a good leader. Because they were, I learned specifically that to be a good leader, you had to be a good follower first, right?
Absolutely.
And that's why I always felt that the best officers were generally those prior service individuals, because to rise to that rank of staff sergeant first class, you have to be a good follower. You have to show initiative. And the other thing that they taught me is that, and I've taken this in my career here, before I became a VP, before I became, any of that stuff, is, everyone always says, I want to be an executive. Or everyone says, I want to be a sergeant.
Right.
And they think that the second you get the title, like pixie dust comes down on you and you suddenly become
You're a good leader.
That leader.
Right.
And the reality is, don't want to be something, just be that.
Just be it.
Right? Like in your day-to-day, forget about what the title says or your rank on you. If you act like you should be an executive, if you act like you should be a CEO or a founder, then you will.
Absolutely.
And people notice that. Little things it can work. If you're the guy that shows up clean shaven with a nice haircut and all that stuff, people notice that because you're carrying yourself like a professional.
Absolutely.
Right? So I learned all these little things. And I think, the overall theme from my Army experience was just putting things in my toolbox, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, I stole little pieces in basic training about being a Joe. I stole, my 2 months of being a Joe, right? But still it counts.
Yeah. Still went through it.
Yeah. And the more important part is, being on the same level as people that, from my background, I otherwise wouldn't have had a chance to interact with as equals.
Right.
Because when you're an officer, it's like, I can be friendly with the 17-year-old guy who has a kid in rural North Carolina.
Right.
But I'm an officer and he's enlisted,
Exactly.
right? I can't really know him. Not in the same way as if we're both in a foxhole as Joes.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and I mean, experience gives you that, right? If you guys are fighting together in the, as we call it, in the suck together, as infantry, you grow together, you learn how to deal with leadership, activities and how to make other guys follow you, because you might not always have sergeant around, you might not always have captain around. So what do you do in a situation when you need to step up? And that's one of the things that that we have in common with the military that we bring to our career now. And as you mentioned, like the guy that shaves every day, the guy has the suit nice and clean. Those are little things that people pick up on as leaders for the company, that shine. And so if you carry yourself in a better, at a higher standard, not to say that you're better than anybody else, but because we've been through that training and through those experiences, we can bring that to the table here and pass it on to others so that they can learn, they can better themselves and become leaders as well, even if they weren't in the military.
Exactly. And I also think that the other key aspect of it as well is just interpersonal relationships. I think most people, you have work relationships that really doesn't get more than skin deep for most people.
Right.
And in the Army, you're doing everything
together
on top of those people, not just together, on top of them, right?
Right.
And you learn how to be able to understand, relate, and put your head in the mind of somebody else.
Absolutely.
And as I, over the course of my career, progressed into management positions, that's sort of been my secret sauce, right? Like I had to learn how to get the best out of
Your
42
people,
unique
out of your
people
group.
from all kinds of social economic backgrounds, all kinds of races, all kinds of cultures, all kinds of education levels. You know, that I think is the real special sauce that an Army person.
Yeah, I mean the diversity alone, let's say just in your team, can be, you know, people from all parts of the world, different cultures, different, as you said, education. So how do you deal with that? Everybody's not a cookie cutter person, you know, and as you know, in basic training, you get all types of walks of life in your platoon in basic, and it's how do you deal with that? How do you make everyone happy? How do you teach everyone so that everybody grows together in the way that they receive it? And, you know, they continue to follow you and not just say, oh, this guy is not for me or this leader is not for me. Like, how do you all get together, work together to go towards that mission that all of you are trying to achieve, whether it be, you know, a presentation, gaining a client, or, you know, making the deal on the project on a third-party vendor, something like that, or getting a new show for a streaming IP, something like that. Like, how do you work together, since everybody's all different? But everyone, as I always say, has their weaknesses and their strengths, right? How does those puzzle pieces work together so that machine, you know, drives towards the goal? Yeah,
and like I said, starting with that in basic kind of understanding people, in OCS, you know, learning that next step of my toolbox of how to, you know, carry myself, be an officer, be disciplined. And then I think that on the tactical level, the thing I learned as a platoon leader, and this is what my company commander told me when we were practicing, you know, in the field with tactics and stuff, is you need to fully learn and understand doctrine and the rules before you can break it. And I think, like, you know, like to make it more in this industry's terms, what made Quentin Tarantino great with Pulp Fiction of changing the order of things wasn't just because he showed up one day and was like, I'm just going to give this a shot, we'll see how it turns out. It's because he understood making movies so deeply that he understood why turning it on its head like that would be more effective and powerful. And that's something that, you know, again, when we're talking new IP and new innovation for a TV network, you know, as much as I'd like to just come in here, kick my feet up and say, hey, let's go on the internet and start streaming stuff, like, you know, you actually have to understand why are our programs successful? Who are they successful with? What is that audience? What are things that are maybe, what's a blue ocean that's missing that we're not kind of in? And
how do we break out in that type of demographic?
So that's the thing. Like, everything I feel like stacked up to get there. And you know, to be perfectly frank, I think that the biggest benefit of my time in the Army was the GI Bill.
The GI Bill?
You know, I went
that's great.
I got my MBA for free. Actually, I got paid to get my MBA, technically. So because I got a stipend. And I'll tell you what, BAH goes a long way at 10 cent wing night. In Gainesville, Florida, you know. So it was a great, you know, that I think was the biggest benefit too, because that again took my career to a whole nother level. And I wouldn't be here if I didn't have that advanced degree as well. So.
Wow. Great. So now that you have that, you know, your Army training, you were an officer, and then now at your position as a VP here in Telemundo, you combine that, where do you see yourself going forward in your career?
Well, I see a couple of things. So, you know, long term, I would like to be head of a division. I'd like to be head of a subsidiary. I'd like to be head of a company. And you know, whether I get there or not, we'll see. You know, I think 90% of the time it's kind of being at the right place, right time, and being prepared for those opportunities. But it's like I mentioned before, it's if you carry yourself in a way that you think, that doesn't mean like acting like you're a big shot or important, but it's looking at yourself and saying, what are the things that you need to fill in your resume in order to kind of be eligible for those positions
for the next step.
So in the near term, you know, I won't say them here, but I've you know, when I've talked to my mentors in the company of where I want to go and all that stuff, I'm very straightforward of, these are the 3 things that I need in my career. And, you know, I acknowledge I might not get them tomorrow here, but I want to make sure I get these 3 things here. And, you know, I think it's without threatening or anything, you say like, look, you know, do you agree that I can get these here? And they do. And then we'll see where it goes from there. But long term, you know, my father was a senior executive, my grandfather was a senior executive at various companies. That's sort of my measuring stick personally that I'm in the shadow of.
Okay.
And in all honesty, until I have a family or anything like that, that's kind of my purpose and goal in life, right? Like, so I don't have to commit or share that with anything else. I can focus on that as my goal.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely one of the most important things to have is a plan.
Yeah.
Right. Where do you see yourself going? So you don't stay stagnant, right? And then you get bored of your job, and then eventually you might want to leave and do something else, right? But if you like where you're at, if you love the company that you're working for, how do you grow within that company? Make a plan, right? Make a plan.
Yeah.
Seek opportunities, and as you said, get a mentor. A mentor, helps out a lot. Can kind of guide you. Yeah, you can go this way. You can't. Stay away from that, and kind of help you on the leadership side, right? So if you want to grow as a leader in the company, as you said, you want to be a head of a department, something like that. How do you get there, and what resources do you need to reach out to kind of gain that title or position?
And also, I'll say another thing that the Army taught me regarding plans. So plan doesn't survive first contact, right?
Oh,
so
never does.
if you asked me what my plan for my career was 3 years ago, I'll tell you right now, I wasn't at Telemundo.
Okay.
I didn't know I had this opportunity here.
Right.
Right. What happened with me is when I came down here during COVID times.
Okay.
I ended up staying here a little bit longer than I was supposed to, and I ended up working on some absolutely great projects for the chairman in terms of some of the expansion opportunities we were looking at.
Okay.
And from my performance on that opened another opportunity here, and that opened another opportunity, and then sure enough, down the road, this job became a job that I then applied for, and then here I am. But
still here.
The funny part was when I was in Comcast. Remember, I started at Comcast. I'm a Comcaster at heart. That when I was rotating, my statement to my boss in Comcast was, I want to do a rotation at NBC because I have zero intention of ever launching in the NBC side of the company. Because I was a Comcaster, right? And sure enough, here I am. And I enjoyed my time. I enjoyed my time down here at Telemundo better than I enjoyed my time with the various teams in the parent company.
Okay.
I really like, I think Bo, Amanda, Ramina, a lot of the senior leadership here.
Absolutely.
I think Juan Ponce, I can't forget Juan is my boss. But I think, in those situations, that was not part of my plan whatsoever.
Right.
But what made it become part of my plan was those things that I said I learned before, that preparation and carrying myself of don't want to be something, be that. Right. And if you do that, then people recognize and give you opportunities. And frankly, they'll give you enough rope to hang yourself with. It's not, trust me, it's not all been sunshine and rainbows on my part. I've had my own mistakes and failures. You have to work hard,
right? You have to work hard. You make your mistakes. You learn from them. You don't just let them, kick you to the ground. You gotta stand up and be like, okay, I went through this. It's an experience. How can I make it better?
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, and that's how it works, kind of in the Army, right? So you start off at the bottom. You're a private.
Yep.
Nobody.
Yep.
They just don't give you rank.
No.
You have to show it and earn it, right? So doing your job, doing your duties, studying, tactics or whatever if you're infantry, and then just showing to your leadership, your sergeants, your lieutenants, and all that that hey, yeah, this guy has potential. Let's keep on moving him up
and make them say we'll give him a chance.
Give him a chance.
And I think that's the thing I've been most grateful about my position here is that they've given me a chance, and again, knock on wood, so far I've been doing okay. But I think that's the thing, getting to that plan is sometimes people get blinded by the plan.
Okay.
Right? Whether it's the person that has, they meet that perfect someone that blah, 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 but, hey, my plan is I want someone with blonde hair and blue eyes, so I'm just going to ignore it. And then 2 years later they go,
they're with the blonde and blue eyes.
No. 2 years later they go, I wish I was with my soulmate that I just blew off, right? It's like that. You really have to make a plan, but not be a slave to that plan.
Absolutely.
I think.
Yeah, and as we mentioned earlier, you have to adapt and overcome, right? Yeah, it might not work out how you plan it to be, but things happen for a reason. And what you thought was going to be your plan, and eventually you off-tracked to something else, could be a better plan for you.
Yeah.
In the end.
Yeah.
Like me, I before I got the job here at Telemundo, I had actually applied to be a police officer in Maryland. I did the physical, I did everything, the testing, I passed, and I actually flew to Maryland, to DC, took all the tests. when I got back to Miami, maybe like a couple weeks later, when I got the results, they sent me a letter in the mail, and they said, "Hey, candidate Rodriguez, thank you for applying for the police department, but we're going to go with somebody else." So that was kind of my rejection letter.
Yeah.
That same week, I got a phone call from Telemundo saying, "Hey, we have this position open. Come on and interview," and I got the job. So I had a plan to move to Maryland with my wife at the time, become a police officer, but out the door.
Yeah, I mean that's how it goes. Like when I was in my MBA program, like I was like, I'm going big tech because that's what I want to do, and that's and I ended up at Comcast, and I ended up down here. I mean, this is the furthest place I thought I was going to go because before my MBA program, coming out of the Army, I was a data analytics consultant in the financial district in New York.
Nice.
So I was like, tech's my thing. I'm a data guy. Data's like the buzzword and
data
cool,
numbers and all that.
And thank God I don't have to code anymore in this job. I'm very glad with that. But yeah, I mean, you sometimes you just got to be prepared that when that change comes. And again, that's the big thing I learned from my military experience.
Great.
That you got to take a knee sometimes, drink some water, and then figure out what you're going to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. All right, Eric. Let's do a round of rapid fire questions.
Sure.
All right. So I want you to get at me from the high ready.
I'm ready.
And come at me with some good answers. All right.
Sure.
All right. Question number 1. If you can go to any military training school, which one would you go to?
Oh, that's easy for me. I'd go to Ranger School.
Rangers?
Well, I dislocated my shoulder on my last jump at Airborne.
Nice.
Oh. So I didn't class up with all my friends.
Okay.
And then I showed up a month later for the next class.
Okay.
And the infantry officer school, instead of just not putting me up there, they like fudged the OML numbers. Like everyone that was injured previously, they just gave like zeros on their tests. So I showed up and my paperwork was messed up.
Oh man.
And they kicked me back, and it was like. So
you didn't get to do it?
Yeah, I shaved my head. I bought like $1,000 worth of gear for it, and so I never did.
You're ready to go.
If I physically could do it right now. Also, by the way, I mean, coming out of the Army, it's a great way to lose 30 pounds, right? So
absolutely,
I'd happily do that as well. But no, that would be my school because I did all the pre-Ranger stuff. I was ready to go. I know for a fact I was very good in the field tactically. As long as I stayed awake, I think I would have been okay, which is not a given.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be my go-to school.
I think I'd do air assault school. I never got to do that one.
No, it never came to
rappel out of a
College Springs.
helicopter.
Yeah. I did.
That'd be great.
I did Airborne, obviously mech, and then I did Striker, and that was a good time.
Nice. Awesome. Okay. All right. If you can have your perfect breakfast, what would it be?
Oof. Honestly, like I'm a pretty simple guy because I don't eat breakfast too much anymore.
Oh, okay.
But for me, it's if you can just go bacon and eggs. Again, it's not the craziest answer that's out there.
Classic. You're going.
Oh
classic.
no, I'll give you something more exotic. So out in Singapore when I was out there, roti canai, really good. It's basically like Indian roti. They make it in Malaysia and Indonesia, and then curry with it, and it's fantastic.
Okay.
So that's a good one.
I like chicken and waffles.
Oh yeah, that's a solid one. That's a solid one.
I love that. That's my go-to like exotic breakfast.
I can't go wrong with that one. Like Waffle House chicken waffles, or like a specific spot.
I think IHOP. IHOP has
okay.
a good one. Yeah.
Okay. It's not a bad choice.
All right. If you can meet any leader and converse with them and have lunch with them, any leader, whether it be passed away or still living, which one would it be?
I would probably say Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because I think that's the all-around guy, right? I mean, he did everything from he was a politician to he was like out wrestling bears to he was fighting in Cuba to he was. I mean, I just feel like that guy is like a fun dude to hang around.
Right.
And anything you want to do, he's probably like, I'm an expert at it, right? So I think like you want to go fishing, he's like, oh, I know the best fishing place here. Yeah. Like you want to wrestle, like I'm state champion. Like he was like well connected and rich. So like you want to go to a sporting event, I got the box up. I got the box seats up there, right? Like I think that would be a good dude, just a guy's guy and a good dude that I think as a grunt you can just sit back and hang out.
Absolutely, go hunting with him. Something
exactly.
Like that.
I think that'd be perfect.
Awesome, man. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. All right. Last question. What was your favorite cadence in the military?
Hail, O Infantry.
Can you sing it a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I got to think.
There we go.
So
I'm going to put you on the spot here.
All right. Up in the morning, out of the rack. Greeted at dawn by an early attack. For Sergeant rushes me off to chow, and I don't need it anyhow. Hail, hail, infantry, queen of battle, follow me. Airborne Rangers, life for me. Nothing in this world is right. I'll go to the last verse because there's 5 of them. It's the mortars and artillery, the screaming bursts around me. Jagged shrapnel on the fly, kills my body, makes me cry. Hail, hail, infantry. So that's
awesome,
it.
Awesome.
But, I mean, you say those things so often, they're burned.
Yeah, no, you got to go running into them, and your drill sergeant
just seared in my head, just in there like that. But
I like the...
Sorry, sound guys, I know you hate that.
I like the Gomer Pyle one.
Yeah, that's a good one,
sit
too.
me in a barber chair, spin me around, I had no hair.
That's a solid one.
I love that one. Awesome.
That's a solid one. Yeah.
Well, Eric, it's been an honor and a pleasure talking with you today,
absolutely.
sir. Thank you for coming on the show, and I just want to say, from one veteran to another, thank you for your service, brother.
Thank you. You too. Rangers lead the way.
Little Rangers lead the way. Airborne.
Yeah.
There you go. Just a little token of our appreciation. I'd like to give you an official NBC Veterans Network dog tag for you.
Appreciate it, man.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, guys, thank you for watching today's episode. And as always, if you know of any veterans or if you're a vet yourself, reach out to us at meetthevets@NBCUni.com. Send us a message to connect to get you on the show. And as always, stay tuned for the next exciting veteran story right here on Meet the Vets. Take care, everybody.